This is where we should always start. And this is something that we should always be doing while working with our VIPs. So let's get into it. So types of assessment. These are the types of assessment for functional behavior assessments that are available to us as BSCs. And it's kind of opposite from the pyramid, but we're going to talk about the different types, two of the three types. The last one, functional analysis, is really only for a BCBA to be conducting. BSCs, behavior techs, those types of professionals aren't qualified to do a functional analysis, and it's going to be out of the scope of our lesson today. But today's PowerPoint is going to be about indirect functional assessment and direct functional assessment. And if you notice, there's a pyramid here. And at the very bottom, it's the biggest, it's the base of the pyramid, right? And it's indirect functional assessment. So this is kind of where we start. And it's, this information is very broad in the indirect assessment. And this is our interviews, our checklists, our rating scales. When we're talking about a behavior from someone else that experienced it, maybe a caregiver, maybe a parent, maybe a staff member, this is the information we're gathering, that indirect information. And this is going to help us narrow down. So as we kind of move up into descriptive functional assessment, and descriptive is kind of another word for direct. In our work at Reaching Beyond Limits, we use the word direct, same as descriptive. As we move up, the scope of our work is getting smaller and smaller. So we're zeroing in on target behaviors. We're zeroing in on information that's much more reliable than from the indirect phase. And then finally, at the very top is a functional analysis. And I said before that only a BCBA is qualified to conduct a functional analysis. And you see this arrow here, I'm sorry, it's kind of blurry, but as we move up, specialized expertise and training required to kind of do each one. As we move up, it gets more and more specialized. And as we move up, we get more prediction, control, and confidence in our hypothesis statement. And we're going to talk about all that today. Bless you.
Thank you.
Let's move on, please. So why FBA? Why do we do an FBA? Well, the main reason is we are trying to determine the function of a behavior of concern. We are trying to figure out why this person is doing the behavior that we are asked to work on. And interventions based on FBAs may be more effective than those selected without consideration of behavior function. So when we have some hypothesis statement about why this behavior is occurring, our treatment interventions are likely to be that much more successful. And in the past, people may, and think about it this way. Well, we're going to get into an example next. I don't want to jump ahead. FBA should be ongoing. A lot of times we really focus on FBA. We get a new VIP. Start the FBA process. But really, the FBA should be ongoing. It should never be over. We need to continue to be doing this the entire time with our VIPs and our work. This FBA process is never over, right? We're always conducting interviews. We're always asking questions. We're always collecting data to figure out what's going on with behaviors of concern that we're working on. Also, we want to gather baseline data. This is very important. Baseline data information, how behaviors are occurring right now. Maybe the rate, the duration, the setting. We want to know kind of where we stand at the very start of our work. Why do we want to know that? Go ahead.
To see if any kind of interventions are effective.
Yes, to compare, to make sure our interventions are successful in helping change the behavior. If we don't have a starting place, if we don't know how things are now, how do we know that we made any impact with our behavioral interventions? And also, it's going to give us clues about why behaviors are occurring. It's going to give us clues about the function of the behavior, which is very important. And of course, we're going to consider the ABCs of behavior: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Do you guys have any questions about why FBA rather than just throwing interventions in the dark. All right. So Thomas. This is Thomas Jefferson. You guys maybe remember him from history class. Founding father. Well, we got called into work with him. He's biting. Does he have like some false teeth in? I don't know. Wooden teeth? Or is that George Washington? He might have George Washington's teeth. I don't know. I need to go into the history book, delve in. But we get called into a case, and Thomas is biting. So what if Thomas is engaging in biting to get items, to get preferred items? How would our interventions change if he was biting to escape demands? What if he was biting to escape demands and the caretaker is putting him in a timeout, for instance? This is the intervention that worked for my other founding fathers, right? Why wouldn't I do the same thing? It worked for George and John Adams. Why wouldn't I do it for Thomas Jefferson? Well, Thomas Jefferson's behavior was in fact to escape demands. So us putting in timeout is actually delivering potentially reinforcement, which would make the biting worse. Without considering the function of the behavior or delving in and doing an investigation to figure out why behaviors are occurring, we might dictate the wrong intervention. The laws of behavior, I love this. I read it in the book recently. The laws of behavior are almost as certain as the laws of gravity. Pretty amazing. When behavior is followed with reinforcement, we're likely to see it again when similar antecedent conditions are in place. When behavior is followed by no reinforcement or a punishment effect, we are likely to see a reduction in that behavior under future occurrences, right? And those are kind of the ABCs of behavior. The antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. And that's kind of what we're figuring out. What antecedents are going to evoke the behaviors, and then we're going to look at the consequence to determine the function of the behavior, or what is maintaining these behaviors into the future. Do you have any questions about this slide? I hope it was a good one.
Definitely unexpected.
So steps of the FBA. And this is for us as BSCs, working in the field at Reaching Beyond Limits. We're going to gather information with indirect and direct assessments, and we're going to get into those a bit more. We're going to interpret the information from indirect and direct observations. So we're going to look at the data. We're going to consider the indirect information we gather. We're going to consider the direct information that we gather. Question?
No, I was trying to read the second one because I didn't know my glasses.
Interpret information from indirect and direct observation. We're then going to create a hypothesis statement. And what is the hypothesis statement? Why we think behaviors are occurring. And then we're going to develop interventions based on the function of the problem behavior. Any questions about the steps of the FBA? Any questions from our online community? Thank you. So here we are with our indirect assessment. What are indirect assessments? Well, they're structured interviews, like our FBA interview form, checklists, rating scales, record review. When we start working on a case, we may ask for records. And working with adults, a lot of times they have records, a lot of records from past assessments. Maybe they work with the behavior specialist in school. We could pull their treatment plan, see what they did, see if it worked, right? So the record review is a great way to get indirect information. Or questionnaires to obtain information from those who are familiar with the person exhibiting the problem behavior. So this person has to kind of know this person and been around this person to be able to talk about the behaviors. The problem with indirect assessments that we always need to have in our cap and in our heads when we're gathering it is that it's unreliable in nature. If I asked my parents, if I could, why is Mike engaging in this behavior? They may know the right answer, but they'd probably tell a reason, and what I would say, Mom, that's not right, right? Or how about asking your parents what things you enjoy? They may hit the mark 20% of the time, and you'd be like, Mom, I don't like that anymore. They might be like, oh, Mike likes Pokemon. Like, I don't like that anymore, Mom, stop.
You don't like Pokemon?
I still do. No, I totally do. I totally do. But the point of this is that the indirect is very unreliable in nature, but still very important to our work because it's going to help guide our practice. It's going to help guide and narrow in our focus of these behaviors of concern. And it's going to give us some insight about possibly why these behaviors are occurring. I am not going to take this information and develop a behavior support plan with just this. It would be unethical for me to do so because of how unreliable this information is. Behaviors change over time. And like I said, the people that are explaining the behavior may not know the true function of why the person's engaging in those problem behaviors. Continue, Shay, please.
Also behaviors in different environments too.
Behaviors in different environments. Yeah, so behaviors happening here at program may be different from at home. Great point, Sue. And there's some other examples. Here's our QABF form that we've used so routinely, where we kind of rank behaviors to determine the function. You know, and I found a lot of, when I do the QABF, what I like to do is really, you know, it says engages in the behavior to get attention. I really like to focus the person's thought on the behavior of concern. So back to the Thomas Jefferson example, I would say Thomas engages in the biting behavior in order to get attention. And that's a great way to focus the person you're interviewing's thoughts on what we are actually looking for. So if behaviors are occurring, if we have a few behaviors we're working on, it's a wise idea to go through the QABF several times, each with a different focus on behaviors. If not, if you're working on a ton of behaviors, what can happen is all of these categories score high, and you really can't pull any useful information from this. So I like to go through it a couple times and change this behavior to the behavior we're talking about and interested in.
When I was doing the FDA training when I first started, there were other options besides the QABF. Is there a particular reason you chose this one over the others?
No. These are just the two most commonly used here at Reaching Beyond Limits. I'm going to show you some more in the next slide. Wait, 1 second, Shay. Sorry. This other form is our FBA interview form. And this is the open-ended questionnaire that we have that kind of we a lot of times start with our work. And it's going to give us information, open-ended questions that really could lead to a lot of information gathered about behaviors of concern, medical issues, medication issues, diet and sleep, antecedents affecting the behaviors of concern, and consequences affecting the behavior of concern. And it's an open-ended interview, so naturally it takes a little bit more time to review with the caretakers. Still very useful to gather that indirect information and help narrowing down our thoughts. Here are some other ones, and I'm sorry for the crude nature of this picture. I had to take it from a picture from the Cooper book, which I referenced in the back, so don't worry. Motivation Assessment Scale, or MAS, and you can find all these online, just a quick search, and you'll have the PowerPoint to be able to look at this again. Motivation Assessment Scale, functions assessed, and it shows you the format or the number of items on this assessment. MAS is a popular one. MARS, Motivation Analysis Rating Scale, is another one. Functional Analysis Screening Tool, FAST, is another really popular one we see in the field. And then finally, our QABF, the questions about behavior functioning. So these are some other assessments that we could use in place of the QABF. One last thing I'd like to say is, hey, like after you know this person very well, after you've been with them for a few months and you know this person, and we're trying to figure out functions of behavior, I like to take this myself. I could now be that person I'm interviewing, and I could run through this myself about this person. And I was like, okay, let me try it. And actually it yielded great results. So I could actually be the one that fills this out. Do we need to interview? And that's the other point too, is we don't have to interview people. We've been working with them for a long time. They're very busy. Their new behavior emerges that we need to work on. I'm going to sling them a QABF. Hey, fill this out when you get a second. I'll collect it on my next time I'm around. Let me know if you have any questions about it. So I don't need to be the one facilitating this interview. I could give them this form and they could fill it out on their own if they've done it previously and they kind of know how to do it. Any questions about indirect assessments? Go ahead.
You're saying that form that you would have them fill out for a parent or like a caregiver?
Yeah, or a staff. Hey, like I want like 5 of the closest staff to fill out a QABF. Instead of sitting there and going through it 5 times with them, I could just say, hey, this is how you do it. Can you fill this out when you have a free moment? And they could go through it themselves and fill it out for you. Go ahead.
With our caseloads changing sometimes, would you recommend that we do a QABF when we start with a client, even if it's already been done?
Yes. Absolutely. Behaviors change all the time. I would recommend to do these things ongoingly. Carry QABFs in your bag. A behavior, something new emerges, check in. Give them the QABF. Run through it. Any other questions about indirect assessments? Many times they're very, even though this is all structured, many times we come into a case and the indirect information we're gathering is very off the cuff. It's not as structured as this, right? They're talking to us about problem behaviors and we are kind of, and what I like to do is remember questions from, can you go back one slide? From this interview form. And Aaron, I know we talked recently. The questions I'm kind of prompting you to ask were questions I thought of, not all of them, but some of them were from this assessment form. And what I'm trying to do is figure out the function of the behavior or why this behavior is occurring. Okay. Indirect. Direct assessments or descriptive assessments as they could be used interchangeably. Direct assessments are much more reliable. Remember on the pyramid, that's one step up from indirect. Encompasses direct observations of behaviors under naturally occurring conditions. So we're seeing behaviors in the real world, in the natural environment, when they should be occurring. Very important for our work. It's going to help guide our treatment plans. Some of the types of direct assessments are, and this form should be ongoing with all of your people, especially for challenging behaviors. But during this assessment period, which is ongoing, this is one of the most important documents you could utilize, the ABC data recording. Every one of your cases should have some type of ABC data recording going on, especially if there's challenging behaviors occurring. A new behavior emerges, the caretakers are well aware to go to the ABC data and fill it out. And do I ask them to do that in the midst of a problem behavior? No, I tell them, hey, when everything cools down, when everything's safe, as soon as you possibly can, go to the ABC data, fill it out. That fresh information is going to be very valuable for us. When we are with them and we see behaviors occurring, we are filling out ABC data sheets. Bless you.
Thank you.
So ABC data recording, and that's continuous recording ABC. Another type is ABC narrative recording, which might be a useful alternative for our caretakers that have a lot of responsibilities, or maybe someone that doesn't quite grasp the ABC format that we're trying to teach them. And the narrative recording is just, hey, here's a notebook. Tell me what, in a paragraph form, what was going on before, what were the behaviors, and what happened afterwards. What was the kind of the consequence, or what did the environment do to kind of support this person during that time? A scatter plot is another example. Does anyone know what a scatter plot is? Okay.
Scatter, like, yeah,
So many people, I think in statistics, a scatter plot is a graph. In our work, it's a little different. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at an example of a scatter plot. Okay, here's an example of a scatter plot. Right here. Yeah, this is it.
Simpler.
I hope so. So the scatter plot is going to be useful because it tells us times behaviors are occurring. So this is a great form to have as well. They're going to split up the time into equal intervals. 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10, 10:30. And all we ask the observers to do is make an X or some kind of mark in the box where a problem behavior occurred. That is the scatter plot. Go ahead. Yeah, you'll have this whole thing. You'll have this whole thing. And why is this so important, do you think?
Because it tells when the behavior is being done.
Yes, right. So what could we then do? I mean, sure, when we have we could figure out what's, intervene in our treatment plan. But during our assessment period, we're still figuring out why this person's engaging in this behavior. Yes. Now we can go during these times. The problem behaviors are much more likely to occur to make sure that we create the most opportunity to observe it ourselves and do our direct assessment. Another way is to pinpoint, hey, make sure you have the ABC data sheets ready around 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, right? That's a great time to have the data sheets ready, right? Who's with the person during this time? Hey, I'm going to make sure I train this person well to collect data. It's much more likely to occur here. And like Sue said, what is happening in the environment that's evoking this behavior? What's happening in the environment to maintain this behavior? These are going to give you clues to why behavior is happening. And then we have an ABC data sheet, and it's filled out. Antecedent, and this has a few more blocks, and I'm planning on updating ours, actually. I saw a really nice one that I'm going to update ours to look like.
New ABC.
Yeah, but this is just an ABC form, a generic one I pulled off the internet. Antecedent behavior consequence. That's what we want. That's what we need. We're filling it out. We have caretakers filling it out. We have that continuous recording. And we're going to figure out antecedents that are evoking the behavior and consequences that are maintaining the behavior. For a gift card, extra points. What kind of data indirect, that's a clue, data recording method does a scatter plot resemble? It is an interval. You're on the right track. What kind of interval?
Oh.
Duration.
Why isn't it a partial interval? It's not duration.
Because it's an encompasses an entire day.
It does not. If a behavior occurs at one time during the interval, we're going to mark that it happened. And that's the exact replication of a partial interval recording. Right? So the scatter plot and partial interval recording are the same. Any questions about any of this? Anyone from our online community?
Just transferring the information to a graph. That's where I'm.
Well, we're going to look at a graph soon.
Okay.
And we're going to have a graph training upcoming. Okay?
Hopefully not next Wednesday.
Why not? You won't be here?
I won't be here.
Then we won't do it next
Okay.
Wednesday. So. All right, let's move on, please. So after we've done all this, we've collected data, we did indirect, we did direct, we got to know this person very well. We figured out antecedents that are likely to evoke the behavior. We figured out consequences that are maintaining the behavior. We have a pretty good idea of why this person's engaging in this problem behavior. And, I might start out, when I'm really unsure about a behavior, if I'm really not sure why this person is engaging in the behavior, I always default in my head to rule out medical. I'm going to think, when I hear this common phrase, this behavior occurs out of the blue. This person doesn't have a reliable way to communicate pain, discomfort, sickness. In my head, I am thinking to myself, when is the last time they saw a doctor? When is the last time they got their teeth checked, their ears checked? When is the last, what kind of food are they eating? Maybe they have GI issues. Maybe they have an undiagnosed medical problem that's out of our scope of behavioral interventions that we need to roll out before we travel down the behavioral intervention route. Sometimes this isn't a concern. Other times when we don't know why someone's engaging in a problem behavior, this is your first step. Not this, but the medical piece. Okay? Roll out medical. Pull in those experts in the field. Doctors, ear, nose, throat, primary care, psychiatrists, medication side effects could be occurring. Did I say nutritionist? Nutritionist is another good one. Right? And I'm going to make a recommendation that they see this doctor. I'm not going to say anything about what the medical intervention should be. Rely on the experts in the field in their realm. We are the experts in the behavior. Let them rely on these medical. A medical problem requires a medical intervention, not a behavioral. Okay, so hypothesis statements. After we figured out why this behavior is occurring, we need to move on to our hypothesis statement and dictate why behaviors are occurring. So the function of the behavior, there's 4 functions that we need to consider. Can we say them? Okay, escape, negative reinforcement, attention, tangible. So the 2 positive reinforcements, attention, tangible. And what's the last one? Sensory reinforcement. And I didn't want to use the term automatic because the next piece of this is determining if this behavior is socially mediated or automatic. And what do we mean by that?
Is it like socially mediated? It has to occur through somebody else.
What has to occur? What is it? Yes, what the reinforcement is. Very good. So the reinforcement needs to be delivered through someone else. Socially mediated. So the opposite is kind of automatic. And what's automatic? They can do it themselves. They access reinforcement by doing it, the behavior themselves. And it's not complicated. Maybe that is, but we consider the behaviors we're talking about here. It's not. When I'm at I always use this example. When I'm at a restaurant and the waitress comes up to me and I order my food, is that socially mediated or automatic? It's socially mediated. I need to access reinforcement through someone else. Is it positive or negative reinforcement? Positive, because the environment will change to add something. Food, good food, I hope.
Might be negative.
Yeah, I was gonna say, food
Oh
poisoning.
yeah, there could be other consequences later down the road. They'll change your going to that restaurant again, right? So we need to consider when we're writing our hypothesis statement, thinking about Thomas Jefferson's biting to get things, to get items, how would we write that as a hypothesis statement? Yes. The function of Thomas Jefferson's biting behavior is socially mediated positive reinforcement. And what about the escape maintain behavior? Thomas Jefferson wants to escape the presidency. Was he a president? Yes.
I hope so.
Yes.
Negative.
How do we write it? Sure, yes. If he has to go through someone else, he has to call his boss and say, I'm not coming in today. Or biting him or whatever. An example of an automatic reinforcement behavior is like, hey, it's dark in here. I'm going to flip on the light switch. Automatic positive reinforcement.
What's the function of biting?
I mean, depends on what we're thinking about. Is he doing it to get items? Positive reinforcement. And think about it. Look at the consequence, guys. Is the consequence adding something or taking something away? Right. And the way and at first, when I first started learning this, I'm like, negative reinforcement. Like, I'm like, it's confusing. I'm like, my head's going in circles. Negative reinforcement always has an aversive antecedent. There's something that's presented the person does not like. I give you homework to do tonight. It's going to be 1,000-word multiple choice on this training. And you guys tell me you have another job. You tell me you're busy tonight. It's your nephew's birthday. You're going to tell me all these behaviors, possibly, to escape, for me to be like, all right, you don't have to do the 1,000. And I might come up with an intervention and be like, you have to do 3 of them. Perhaps. 3,000, no. You have to do 3 questions, and then you can go to your nephew's party. Do you guys have any questions about your hypothesis statement and how important it is? Because this is going to be the starting place for assessment. When we write this hypothesis statement, it's going to help us dictate interventions. Antecedent interventions, consequence interventions, and teaching alternative behaviors. This is what it's all going to come down to, our hypothesis statement. This is what all this assessment is leading to. Do you have any questions about function of behavior, the positive and negative, or socially mediated and automatic reinforcement? Right now, it's your time to ask. So in your treatment plan, where we're writing about behaviors, target behaviors, this needs to be in there. All behavior support plans need to have a hypothesis statement for challenging behaviors, or why we believe they're happening. It doesn't have to be correct 100% of the time, but we should do our due diligence with indirect and direct assessments to make our best guess. And behaviors could be occurring for multiple reasons. And I should have mentioned that on a previous slide. So if a behavior works to get attention, it might work with this person to get escape from aversives as well. And it might work to get stuff I like. And we see it with small kids all the time with crying. Crying works to get mom's attention. Crying works to get out of bed when they're put down for bed. Crying works to get food and items. Crying has multiple functions for a baby. Right? So many behaviors could have, I think the last thing I read, which was years ago, could have changed. About 40% of all behaviors have dual functions or more than one function. Do you guys have any questions about this? Can anyone give me an example of a socially mediated positive reinforcement?
Give me a gift card.
What was that?
Giving me a gift card.
If I gave you a gift card? Yeah, for what? What kind of behavior?
Raising my
Yes, I would. Good job. Yes. Nice teamwork over there. I'll give you a gift card for being a good team. How about, can you give me an example of automatic negative reinforcement? Yeah, dude, I was thinking the same thing. What is it?
I was gonna say flick a bug off me or like an itch or something.
Because what? Oh, you have an adversive feeling, like a bug on you. You engage in a behavior, flicking. It escapes the aversive. Right, so in the future, when you have a bug on you, you're likely to do that behavior again. When I reinforce you guys being a good team, you guys are likely to be that team in the future. And don't get guys, but don't get pigeonholed. Don't take our examples and run with it. Because I heard biting. And biting could be an example.
It can be automatic though. Most of the time people see it as maladaptive. It can be automatic as self-stimming.
It could be automatic, but it could also be what?
Medium.
Yes. We don't know. And just because we worked with the...
Say they're upset because there's loud noise and maybe they retreat more and bite their hand. Automatic.
Yeah.
So you're talking about social.
Yeah, so socially mediated, hey, it's loud. I like your example. It's loud in this room. I don't like it. I'm going to bite my hand. Then Deanna runs over and gets me into the quiet room. I'm likely to bite my hand again when it's loud. Socially mediated. I had to go, Deanna delivered the reinforcement. If I could get up on my own, for instance, and go to the quiet room, maybe a good intervention for this person would be, hey, you feel overwhelmed, go to the quiet room. No need to bite. So don't get pigeonholed. Just because we had very much success working with a similar behavior with another VIP, your brain should go blank with a new VIP that's engaged, and with the same VIP later in the future, because behaviors could occur for different reasons. So just because someone client or VIP A bites and VIP B bites, there could be biting for completely different reasons that we have to delve into. Don't get confused that the same behavior needs the same functioning. Have an open mind about why behaviors are occurring. Any questions about this slide? And this is going to be how we dictate our treatment interventions. All right, let's move on, please. Baseline graph. It's your favorite part, Sue?
Yeah.
So this is another important part of our assessment period, is to figure out how often behaviors are occurring now. So that, like Brandon said, when we put interventions in place, we could compare our work to make sure that we are headed in the right direction. And and this is the other important part here, guys. We have a problem behavior here. And look, the line is going down already during our baseline period. And this is the intervention phase, this line. The line didn't copy and paste over, sorry about that. But we have a decrease in this behavior already during baseline period. We're recording, this is a serious behavior, self-injury, we'll say. And we see a decrease in it occurring during baseline already. What might we consider about this behavior?
One big event that's causing this behavior, and now that event is over and they are remove themselves from that situation or something, that's not going to come up again.
Well, what?
You don't really need an intervention.
Right. Yes. It's decreasing on its own. During my baseline observation, this behavior is already showing a decrease naturally through what is happening right now. I don't need a special intervention for this. It's already working to be reduced.
Plus the holidays are over because it's January 1st.
There it goes.
I mean, consideration, right? Important consideration. But this example, I really want to hit home, guys, that this is an example of a behavior that's being punished naturally, showing that reduction automatically with no interventions needed. So it's not a behavior that we should focus on because it's already being reduced. I'll still keep track of it. If it doesn't zero out maybe, and it's very concerning, I might consider putting interventions in place, but not super. I would just tell the person to keep doing what they're doing. Keep doing whatever's happening is working already. I shouldn't use automatically. Already. So we don't need special interventions for this. This is an example of what kind of function for behavior. Reinforcing or punishing? Punishing, because we see that decrease. Now let's look at these other two. We're in baseline period. We see this effect of behavior. An increase. What kind of effect on behavior is this having? Reinforcing. And what about this one that's maintaining over time? It's staying at 4. Is that punishing or reinforcement? Yes, it's reinforcing. Reinforcement is maintaining or an increase in the future. Punishing is the opposite. So these two behaviors probably are requiring special interventions because they are being led to reinforcement. So those are the two behaviors that we should work on. And it's property destruction and hitting. Those are the two behaviors I'm going to be focused on in my behavior support plan. When I put my interventions in place, I am going to compare. I'm going to draw a line here. I'm sorry, there's no line. And I'm going to compare where the behaviors are after my interventions are in place to see if my interventions were successful in reducing the problem behaviors. Does this make sense to you guys? Do you guys have any questions about this graph? The baseline period is so important for our work. I would not put in a treatment plan, maybe in one case I would, without a baseline. And the baseline doesn't have to be this long. It could be 2 or 3 days. If someone is hurting themselves severely or has a terrible behavior, I encourage, and that needs to be addressed immediately. It is unethical for us to have a long baseline period. We need to get in touch with the BCBA immediately and give them interventions immediately to help solve this problem, or at least give them something to work on. But most of the cases, we can have a baseline period that's going to help guide our work. So make sure you are collecting baseline data. And as we go, now we're going to teach this person to request. That was the intervention we're going to teach, an alternative behavior. As I move forward, this behavior continued to go up. So now I'm going to reconvene with the BCBA. I'm going to come up with a different intervention. I'm going to draw a phase change line here. And then I'm going to keep collecting data, to keep comparing to see how these environmental changes are impacting this behavior. Does that make sense to you guys? This is a single case design, an A/B design, where we have a baseline period, we draw a line, and the line dictates an intervention. And we compare our work. We see how the behavior changes after we used our intervention. If we are on the right track with our hypothesis statement or why behaviors are occurring, we can expect a change here. There could be other variables that are impacting the behavior, like the person's not doing carrying out the treatment plan with fidelity. Maybe we were wrong about the function of the behavior. But if we were on the money with our hypothesis statement, this behavior should change in the right direction for us. Without this baseline period, and there's more we're going to review in our graph training, but without this baseline data, it is impossible to know if our work's effective or not. And am I just going to compare my work or everyone on the team's work? I'm going to compare everyone's work. So the doctor makes a medication change here. I'm going to draw a line to indicate medication change, increase in whatever. And then and this was prescribed to treat hitting behavior or aggressive behavior. I'm going to evaluate the doctor's interventions too. Then when they go to the doctor, they could take this graph with them, or you could go and take it and be like, Doc, here is the data for this medication. And considering the harmful effects of medication, this gives the doctor great data about what they should do, if they should make any changes, or if they should proceed with the medication into the future. Without this, what are the doctors likely to say? When we go in, what do the doctors say to us?
How you doing?
Yeah, how are you feeling? And right, we might be like, we're feeling good. And how many of our people can't communicate their own need? So they ask their caretaker, how you doing? Wow, super unreliable indirect assessment information. Here we have very good data. We could be helping our treatment team, helping our VIPs, their caregivers, be able to give this concrete data to doctors to compare, to dictate our work and dictate the work of the experts around us. You guys have any questions about baseline collection and why it's so important? Does it make sense? Cool. All right, let's continue, please. So the recap. We're going to collect data on the ABCs of behavior and complete the FBA, doing indirect and direct assessments. We're going to determine the function of the behavior to the best of our ability based on the information we gathered. And also make that baseline graph. Determine if interventions are even necessary. And then we're going to develop a behavior plan based on the function. And that's going to be a BCBA coming in helping guide you. And the BCBA is thinking about 3 types of strategies. Antecedent strategies, which we'll have a training on. Consequence strategies, which is our differential reinforcement training that we've done already. And teaching, and that's same with teaching alternative behaviors. Those are the 3 kind of areas that we're going to be focusing on in our behavior support plan. All right, continue, please. Here's the FBA summary report that we ask you guys to fill out. And this just keeps track of your FBA process when you, especially initially, when you're going through work with your BIP, gathering information. This is going to help guide your work and collect that information so it's not all over the place. After we complete any steps of this assessment, we're going to recoup to the FBA summary form and fill it out. So this is where we collect all of our information from our assessment. And if you see, I mean, I'm sorry it's so small, but summary of indirect measures, FBA interview form, QABF. What if you use a MAS here, an MAS? Just write that. Get rid of what you didn't use and write what you did use. And I'm going to write the hypothesis statement that was gathered from this. Hey, from the MAS, the function of Thomas's biting behavior was socially mediated positive reinforcement. And I'm just going to use the information I got from the MAS here. I'm not going to consider anything else. ABA direct observation, baseline ABC data collection, summary of a preference assessment if we do one, which isn't the scope of today's training. Summary of record review, any record reviews, back to the indirect, which maybe could be up here. Reviewed with the BCBA, reviewed all your information gathering with the BCBA. And then the final hypothesis statement. Why these challenging behaviors are occurring. And this is going to dictate your interventions and the BCBA's intervention. When you guys come to me with the problem behavior, if you guys can't tell me why you think behaviors are happening, I can't give you interventions. It will not work. I'm throwing darts in the dark without this whole process being completed. This is like a doctor prescribing medicine without doing the blood work, without doing a test to figure out if this person's needed of this intervention. Same is true with us. This assessment period needs to be completed for problem behaviors. All right, continue. These are the references. Cooper, of course, always and forever. And this other book I really like, The Verbal Behavioral Approach, written by Mary Lynch Barbera. She's a great author. She wrote 2 books that I really enjoy. I gathered this information from these 2 books. Do you guys have any questions for me today? Can you go back one slide, Shay? Something else I was going to mention. Okay, slipped my mind. No questions? Anyone from our online community? We will send the PowerPoint out in our Teams group chat for you guys to download. We will upload this video to YouTube so you could watch it again if needed. Even if you watch a bit of it to be like, hey, what was that direct assessment piece again? You could go right to this and watch it again. And we will cycle through these trainings over and over again. These are the cornerstones of our work. Thank you guys for your attention today, and I'm always available if you need anything, okay?